injured or no?
Yeah. There's a lot of pain. The one brother had to shoulder all the emotional, just heaviness of what happened with his mother's sickness. And he kind of felt betrayed by the other brother not going with him, by staying with this abusive dad. And then, so, on one hand, you can kind of see why Joel Edgerton's character stayed, because he ended up marrying his girlfriend at the time. And so it looks like he made the right choice for him. But Tommy having to go and live in small apartments and care for his mom, that was a lot of anger. But it was a lot of anger compounded, I think, from seeing the anger growing up, feeling abandoned, and then issues and all the things he saw during the war kind of coming to a head. So I think, I think it was kind of like, why are you so angry with him? I mean, that's a lot of pain. So it was kind of, but you don't know unless you've experienced that yourself. I mean, it's so hard, but you got it. Like, you got that he was really mad at his brother, and they were estranged, and he didn't want any part of his life. But at the same time, I mean, that's the whole character. You had to have that pain and, the vulnerability at the same time.
And when he walks into diners, he sounds like a maraca.
Yeah. All the pills that he had.
And what I thought was interesting in the beginning, when Tommy goes to Patty Nick Nolte for training, he just knows how good he was because Tom was such an excellent wrestler. So he can throw great leg kicks, and he can wrestle and punch. Once he gets some more training, man, he's trouble.
They based him off a real Pennsylvania state wrestler too. Like,
there's
a kid that they patterned it off who actually won that many matches, and that's who they built that character after. So that amount of research that went into this is incredible.
A blue collar wrestler from Pennsylvania, that sounds terrifying. Just wipe the floor with you.
That's wrestling country for sure. That in Iowa. 2-1.
Man, when we were in Florida, we would have gotten wiped. Those kids would have wiped the floor with us. I wouldn't have lasted long.
Yeah, they grow up. That's all they do from like age 5 onward.
And if anyone's listening, I was on varsity my freshman year of wrestling just because there's no one else in the weight class, and I won one match because the kid pinned himself. I started raising the roof like an idiot. Oh, man. That was awesome.
Hey, you got to get your first win somehow.
That's right. And I dig how in the morning, Nick Nolte, his son, comes home, and he's probably all excited. He's 1,000 days sober. He sings a song with some coffee for his son. And Tom Hardy just lays him out again. And he's like, I'm throwing the coffee pot away in a half hour. You better get down. That was a good response by him.
Well, Nolte's like, this is my chance to make up for all that lost time and redeem myself. And he just completely overdoes it. Yeah. It just goes on way too strong, too early.
And I also like how he goes excited to Philadelphia, to Joel's house or to Brendan's house, and just like, hey, I'm 1,000 days. And then he's like, oh, your brother's home. And then Joel immediately is like, oh, well, you're gloating. He's like, no, I'm trying to. Dude, I've never done things right, so now I'm trying to do things right, but I look terrible, and you guys are angry. You guys have ever, but it's just
you just assume that I'm trying to be a jerk, but somehow I'm not.
Oh man, and his hat game in this too. Nick Nolte's hat game is very strong. I love that hat they put on him. It just, oh man, he wore that. It didn't wear him. He takes it off when he's sad. Oh man, that poor guy. Oh,
yeah,
man.
His hat could have got nominated for an Academy Award about emotions it portrayed to the movie.
Best hat. That could be MTV. Best hat acting. Indiana Jones.
That's right.
Harrison Ford has 4 of them for this fedora. Who else has done good hat acting? Probably Gene Kelly. I can't think of anybody else because he always
Johnny Depp, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh yeah, that's a big hat. He wears that. I'm gonna get you, sucker. That is a great scene with the hats, with the people hiding inside of it. Jeez, always. But no, I mean, also too, what'd you think about the beach scene when the brothers finally meet? You know, they've kept each other for so long, like, apart from each other, but I liked when they first got there. I liked that, like, their conversation about how you left me, and they haven't talked about, have they talked since they were 16 years old?
No, they hadn't. Zero contact. And you go through half of a movie before the stars even come close to interacting with each other. And that was kind of neat. I mean, there's not a whole lot of movies where you have these parallel stories and then they all kind of come together halfway through. So, yeah, I mean, I almost thought they were going to start fighting, like right there on the beach. Like, I mean, at the time, Hardy's character was rolling up to me, like the way how aggressive he was and how angry. there might have been some punches thrown, like right there on the beach.
I love a good beach fight. Haywire, that's a good beach fight. But I think Gavin O'Connor did a good job. He wanted to start slow and build it to where it sped up at the end. And I think he succeeded at that. He really built a cool. It didn't. Once it got going, it just kept rolling.
Yeah, there's spikes of action though. There's different spikes of action leading up to it. Yeah, it's a good point.
He beats up Mad Dog, and then he beats up Jason Statham stunt double, and then the long training montage, which the director didn't really like. He said, he's like, "What do you think about this montage?" And I'm like, "Well, we had to do it."
It was a short montage, and he did it in like 4 different screens, so you could tell that they did the bare minimum in the montage. You know, Tom Hardy doing some crazy sit-ups, flexing his lats a couple times. He did a lot of jogging. It seems like Tom Hardy did an inordinate amount of jogging through the training session.
His traps had traps in this movie. His shoulders were insane.
Yeah, what do you think about his fighting position? I never understood why his fists were like so close together. Like he actually, most people have a kind of a wider fist stance, but his were almost parallel to the ground the way he would roll up.
I've never seen that.
Probably because his pecs were so big.
His pecs and traps are so big.
He gained 20 pounds for that movie. That's impressive.
Tom, put your arms down. I can't.
Yeah.
Because Joel pops his up like a fighter, and then he comes in. What's the best way to explain it for people
Well, the fists were kind of closer together. It was felt like kind of animalistic. It didn't feel like a fighter. It just felt like this caged animal.
I mean, I guess that's the style they had to have, right, for him. Because he wasn't a technical guy at all. Even though he knew a lot of the basics of fighting, his footwork was fine. Yeah, but you're right. He wasn't too great of a fighter, so he just had to destroy people.
Yeah. The ending to go destroying people and all that pent up anger, there was the punch after the round ended.
Oh,
like
dirty.
They stop, the horn blows and then bam, just rocks him. And then afterwards, you see Joel Edgerton make it to his corner, and you see Tom Hardy's character just staring at him yeah, yeah. He actually nodded yeah, I punched you after the bell. So it was oh, man, I did not see that coming too. And then after he popped his arm, he was like, "Are you okay? What are you doing? Stop fighting!" And then Hardy slams him into the corner with one arm. He was so mad. He's going after him.
It's a wounded animal in there. And then I liked, the ref was actually a ref, Josh Rosenthal. So I dug that. And then,
and Frank Grillo yelling at the ref the whole time.
Yeah, Josh, give him a few seconds for this. Gosh, Josh.
Do your job, Josh.
Come on, Blue. And I don't know. And also the end fight scene, knowing what I know about people being injured in fights, so there was just a fight recently where this guy Anthony Smith was fighting, and he was fighting Glover Teixeira, who's just a monster, just one of my favorite fighters. And Anthony Smith was spitting out teeth between rounds. Spitting out teeth. And he told his corner that he was spitting out teeth. No one threw in the towel. So I guess that makes me understand why fighting with a broken arm isn't... I have no problem with it. Do you have a problem with it? Why doesn't a ref stop it? But that happens. Who cares? It's 2011, too. The sport wasn't where it is nowadays.
And he didn't have anyone in his corner, either, to throw in the towel. He alienated his dad.
And he's not throwing in his hat. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think the most powerful part of that, outside the I love you, Tommy, which finally got him to kind of release that anger, was Joel Edgerton didn't know what to do. He's like, do I finish him? Mm-hmm. Do I have to break this guy, or should I let him win? What do I do? And he actually looked to his father in the audience, what do I do? And Nolte just gave him the nod. Yeah, you have to do it. You have to break him for him to be reborn. And that's the great part. I feel like both these guys won. Edgerton won the fight, but Tom Hardy won in the sense that he kind of let all that anger go. It's time. It's like the old Tommy. It's time to usher in this new, phase of his life. So in a way, he won it as well. Just being able to release that pain and move forward.
The director kept saying he has to kill him. He has to kill his brother for him to, not literally, but exactly like you said, you just got to beat him to do that.
You got to break him. There's no other way. But he broke him, and he still wasn't letting go. Tommy was still holding on to all the hate, and it wasn't until he said, because I thought that too. I thought he had to break him, but then I watched it again, and it was he didn't tap out from the rear naked, choke until he actually heard him say, "I love you, Tommy. I love you," and that's when he let it go. The violence brought them together, and then that's what finally got him through.
Oh man, and I like the little scene between Nolte and Edgerton. I think after a second fight, where he's like, "You got this," and Edgerton's like, "I'm gonna do this." And Nolte looks so happy that his son didn't spit coffee in his face or throw quarters at him when he said it. He's like, "That's my son. That's my son."
Yeah, yeah, and then that was great. That moment where they started coming together, but then afterwards, Nolte didn't make the mistake of inserting himself between the brothers when they walked out.
Yeah,
he's like, this is a beautiful moment. This is crazy how these two guys came together. I'm just going to let them be. Look how far our family has come in the last, couple weeks, and I'm just going to let them go. This is a victory to itself. And he didn't insert himself. I mean, he could have, the weak thing to do was to try and, be a part of that glory, but just by letting him go was so much more powerful.
So what I really like about this movie is how it lives in the small moments. I mean, there's a scene where, like we just talked about, where Nolte and Edgerton share one sentence and Nolte's happy. There's just looks in the film. There's just tiny moments where people celebrate or give certain looks or the unique extras. This movie sort of thrives in the little moments, but I think one thing it lacks is just the Yo Adrian, the massive sports movie kind of cliche, the pointing to out, like the Babe Ruth, where in Major League Behringer points to the outfield, the slow motion. I mean, this ends with a national song that's very somber. So as much as I love that, do you think that might have hurt it in regards to box office too, since to get back on that subject?
Yeah, I do agree. And, I hadn't thought about it since you said that, but it almost seems kind of counterintuitive in that way, that it lives in the small moments. It doesn't have that love. You talked about big moments, but it doesn't have a marketable love story. I mean, it has a stable marriage. And it doesn't have those big protagonist versus protagonist. You're not rooting against someone, which is kind of weird right now, because if you look at, I think, a lot of the negativity we're seeing in movies, it helps to kind of root against someone, and it doesn't have that with a protagonist versus protagonist. And my favorite part of the movie was one of the smaller parts, and it was the part when it got out, everyone realized that they were brothers, and they're in the finals, and Joel Edgerton's character says to him, "What are you going to do?" And he just looks at her and says, "I'm going to fight him." And then he goes and fights him. And it was just like this little thing, but it was like that pause that Edgerton had, like he was thinking about it. And yeah, the best thing I can do is just to fight my brother, and it's tough, but that was my favorite part. It wasn't like a big, big bang type of part of the movie. And I think, it's in the small parts, but it was also it went big in the sense of how deep it was. I mean, conflict as a solution, or the Moby Dick soundtrack kind of narrating where you are in the movie. It kind of advances the storyline through Moby Dick, and things like you're working out all the issues in your family through fighting. So you're not really fighting. It's just really, it's way that you're coming together and exercising your demons. It really went big in terms of how deep it was. So, I mean, you really had to pay attention, and you really had to commit to the movie. So that's why I think it kind of was hard. And my other strategy, and I say this because I just wish this movie has a rebound or like a renaissance like Deep Blue Sea, where it's, I think part of it is to, when you try to be everything to everyone, sometimes it's not that marketable, but it's still this labor of love that it's a beautiful movie, equal parts drama and equal parts, action.
And you know what? I really just thought about that line too. I didn't even have that in my notes when Tess asks him, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fight him." They don't pan in on his face. They don't do a massive close-up. It's not a freeze frame. They don't cut the score, have him look in the camera, "I'm going to fight him." Like, they don't have that. They have him saying that as almost a throwaway line where he's walking away. So your favorite movie in this thing could have been played much more epically, but they play it more realistically.
Yeah, yeah, they really play it down. They did it more of the thoughtful approach.
And he lets, yeah. Oh, sorry. The director lets the camera linger too in certain scenes. My favorite moment is just the breakdown of Nolte with Tom Hardy. They let that sit. They let it simmer. They hold the camera, and that's such a small moment of just a father and son crying in a hotel room, but just watching the two of them, watching Hardy begrudgingly come back and hug his dad and then kind of wrap him up because he knows that he had put